In Jamaica, the trail of devastation left in the wake of Hurricane Melissa, over 30 people in the region have lost their lives.
A path of total devastation across the Caribbean as the huge cost of Hurricane Melissa is counted.
The scale of the devastation caused by Hurricane Melissa is becoming clearer after Jamaica's strongest storm in modern history, which has left a trail of destruction across the Caribbean. The town of Black River on the island's southwest coast was one of the worst hit areas. In this satellite image from February, you can see the town's market and the fire station next to it. Now, in this latest image, you can see the extent of the damage to them, as well as to the surrounding buildings. Haiti, Cuba and the Bahamas were also hit, and at least 34 people are now known to have died. The UK government says it's chartered some flights to help British nationals leave Jamaica. From Jamaica, here's Nick Davis.
This is what remains of St Elizabeth Parish. In the south of the island, so hit first, it bore the brunt of Melissa's rage. And little was spared. Homes, businesses and lives destroyed. The so-called breadbasket of Jamaica ravaged underwater. David, forced to abandon his farm, doesn't yet know what livestock he's lost.
I know I cannot do any work for I don't know for how much weeks or months, so I have to just sit down here and just trying to get myself together.
I don't have anything to wipe it now.
Further north, parts of Montego Bay were engulfed by flash floods. The water may have subsided, but not the terror for people like 77-year-old Albert.
At one stage, I see the water at my waist, and about 10 minutes time, I see it around my neck here, and I make my escape.
3/4 of the island was without power this morning, say the authorities, and the damage here is estimated at more than £15 billion. Communities where infrastructure was always lacking are even more isolated now. Along the coast, Falmouth was known for its Georgian buildings, but now many are barely standing as the clean-up begins. Sections of the coastal road that normally protected against storm surges were swept away as Melissa tore through the island. Some airports are reopening to allow flights to bring in aid. But the hospital in Falmouth told me it hadn't received any supplies or had contact with anyone since the storm.
So people here are trying to get used to a new normal. They not only survived the hurricane, but now having to deal with trying to clean up, trying to get power, trying to connect with relatives who they don't know whether or not they're dead or alive.
From here, Melissa barreled into Cuba, weaker but still a dangerous Category 3 storm, wreaking havoc.
I had to hide in the closet and then run out when the roof started to collapse. I had to run outside to seek refuge in another house.
In neighbouring Haiti, it's unleashed deadly floods in this, the poorest Caribbean nation. And though downgraded, Melissa was still ferocious as it moved onto the Bahamas. The United States says it's sending disaster teams to Jamaica, offering aid to Cuba, and is responding to requests to help from stricken countries across the Caribbean. For people living here, help can't come soon enough.
Well, the UK government has tonight chartered rescue flights for thousands of British nationals in Jamaica, which was devastated by Hurricane Melissa. The hurricane was one of the most powerful storms ever recorded and is now heading for Bermuda. It's been downgraded to a Category 2 storm with winds of over 100 miles per hour, and it leaves death and destruction in its wake. At least 20 people have been killed on Haiti, and Cuba was also hit. But Hurricane Melissa was at its peak when it struck Jamaica. It left dozens of people dead and destroyed many homes, buildings and businesses. From Jamaica, our correspondent Robert Moore has the latest.
Many of the parishes in western Jamaica lie in ruins. Homes, businesses, infrastructure were no match for the greatest storm ever to strike this southern coastline. As we have already glimpsed since arriving on the island, the rebuilding process will take not months, but years, and some of the most cherished and historic buildings cannot be replaced.
There are entire communities that seem to be marooned and also areas that have been flattened. I think the entire Jamaica is really broken because of what has happened, but we remain resilient.
From satellite imagery, the island's bright tropical colours vanish. The 180-mile-an-hour winds of Melissa tore at the very fabric of life here. The question for many now is the speed and efficiency of the relief effort. When will new homes be built? When will infrastructure, including connectivity, be restored?
There are people who still have not been able to make contact with their families, their loved ones, their friends, and road access is still impossible. So you can imagine the deep, deep sense of worry.
As some mobile phone signals are coming back online, new videos have emerged of that harrowing moment when Melissa made landfall. The aid effort required for Jamaica is immense. That effort is visible on the ground already, troops helping with distribution. And on the streets, the clearance work has begun.
Jamaica is a very strong nation of people. We are very resilient, very proud, very united, and I have no doubt that people will come together to restore and repair.
The economy is driven by the twin industries of tourism and agriculture, both immeasurably impacted by the hurricane. The crops and trees have been shredded, and the airport that handles much of the tourist traffic is significantly damaged. And to be clear, what we have seen in Jamaica is only part of the destruction that's been witnessed across the Caribbean. In Haiti, there has been a heavy death toll. The country's infrastructure and governance already broken, even before the storm piled on the misery. And eastern and central Cuba took a heavy hit from the winds and from 24 hours of constant torrential rain. In some areas of Jamaica, the rain was almost as damaging as the winds, triggering landslides.
Major breakaway.
Jamaica has been severely tested this week by the power of nature. Now it needs the power of good governance and the generosity of its friends.
Robert is making his way to the worst affected areas. He joins us now from Maypen in central Jamaica tonight. And Robert, we're beginning to see the true scale of the destruction and the damage.
That's absolutely true. And as you might expect after a storm of this ferocity, there's a mix of emotions on this island, certainly in western Jamaica, in the St. Elizabeth parish and around the town of Black River, a sense of devastation because they've lost homes, they've lost livelihoods, businesses are in immediate jeopardy. But there's also a sense that it was a lucky escape for the population centre around Kingston, which was barely touched by this hurricane, and there is a sense of gratitude that this storm passed from the south to the north largely over agricultural land, didn't move east-west across the heart of Jamaica. There's a bigger point here too, which is that people here recognise that this was the greatest storm of their lifetimes. In fact, it was the greatest hurricane ever recorded since the mid-19th century to hit Jamaica. But nobody here, certainly not officials and not experts, believe this is the last great hurricane. So there is a challenge here, not just to build back, but to build back better with greater resiliency for the extreme weather events that almost certainly lie ahead and for the effects of climate change. And for that reason, this storm is not just being watched here in Jamaica, but across the Caribbean, indeed by all countries which have a fragile and vulnerable infrastructure. There are lessons to be learnt, of course, from here about preparations, evacuation and the post-storm recovery. And many people are pointing out here that the government is stretched almost to breaking point, having to prioritise particular communities and particular parishes to serve first.
Robert, as you say, an immense challenge ahead there in Jamaica. Thank you.